All right, so let's get started. We're going to be looking at Unit 10. Unit 10 is we're going to start with surface area. So of prisms and cylinders today. So what's a surface area? Right? We heard area. We know area of rectangles, triangles, parallelograms, shapes that we talked about before. We know area. Now imagine that you're at your house right now and you called a painter. You call a painter and you tell them, all right, can you paint a room? What they're going to do, they're going to get what we call the lateral area. So the walls, they're going to look at the walls, but the walls, what they're going to do, they're going to look at this as rectangles. Okay, they're going to look at rectangles. They get the area of each rectangle. They know how much paint they need. They know how much time it will take them, and they will give you a price. That's what we call the lateral area. Now, a prism, let me talk about a prism now. A prism, what it is it's kind of like a room. If you think of a room, it's going to be, the walls are going to be rectangles, but then there's also going to be two bases, one on the top and one at the bottom. Now the bases are going to be exactly the same thing. Okay, so let me just say that again. A prism, it has two bases, one on top, one on the bottom, and then the rest are rectangles. Now the base on the top and the bottom, they're going to be equal. And they're going to be whatever shape we can think of. A triangle, we can think of a parallelogram, we could think of a trapezoid, we could think about anything. Even circles. Okay, now when we get that, we're going to have what we call a cylinder. Look at your room right now. Like if you're in the room, you are in a prism. If you look at the top, which is what we call the ceiling, look at the bottom, which is what we call the floor, those two shapes, the two bases are equal. And then at the sides, you have all rectangles. So we're going to take a look at here. Find the surface area of each figure. Round your answer to the nearest tenth if necessary. Okay. So there will be some decimals in some questions. So I'm going to look. My first thing I should be looking at when I look at a prism is I'm looking if there's a shape that is not a rectangle. Right? I can see in question number 2, I see a shape that is not a rectangle, right? I mean, point out, I'm looking at number 2. Easy, I can see a shape that is not a rectangle. Okay, now let me come back to number 1. All the sides are rectangles. Now, let's take a look at a room. I'm in a classroom. You guys probably in a bedroom or somewhere. Usually, Usually, the two bases, the one on top, the one on the bottom, are rectangles as well. Okay, so that can happen. Looking at number 1, the base and the bottom, the bases are rectangles. So when the bases are rectangles, you guys can see there's 4 90-degree angles. Let me highlight this rectangle here. When the base is a rectangle, I highlight it for you guys. Now that's a rectangle where the sides are the same thing, which is what we call a squared. But let me just point out that we have a rectangle on the top and a rectangle at the bottom. If I extend this thing straight, right, there's one on top, one at the bottom. Like I said, imagine your room. You have a ceiling, you have a floor. So you have a base on the top, a base at the bottom. Now my base has 4 sides. So if I was to build a house, this thing will have 4 different walls. So it has 2 bases and then some walls at the side. The amount of walls that I have at the side is equal to the amount of sides the base has. All right, so let's get to work on this. So the base is a rectangle in a squared, a 10 by 10, right? A squared is a rectangle. So I know for rectangles, I look for a 90-degree angle. So I'm gonna look at this 90-degree angle, and it's made by 10 and 10. So I just go 10 times 10, and it's gonna give me 100. Each of my bases is 100. Okay. Now I need to know the measurement of each side of my base. I know one side is 10, the other side is 10, 10, and 10, right? There's 4 sides. I need to know the measurement of each of those sides. Now, if I had my prism standing up, so the base at the bottom, the base on the top, the distance between them is what we call the height. In reality is the number that has nothing to do with the base. All right, so here, 7 7 is the number that has nothing to do with the base. So I'm going to multiply 7 times each side of the base. Each of my sides is 10, so I'm going to go 7 times 10, and each of my walls is going to be 70, right? 7 times each side of the base. All right, so I have the area of the walls, I have the area of the top, I have the area of the bottom. Now I'm just going to add them all up. Use a calculator if you need to. In my case, my surface area happens to be 480. Round it to 1 decimal place if necessary. You might have a decimal. All right, so let's take a look at question number 2 now. I said earlier the base was a triangle, so that's fine. I'm gonna just draw a triangle on top, a triangle at the bottom, right? I have 2 bases. You guys can see the other triangle here. So I had 2 bases, one on top, one at the bottom, and then some walls at the side. Because the base has 3 sides, I'm gonna have 3 walls. All right, so let me get the area of my triangle first. I know for the area of a triangle, I look for the 90-degree angle, which you guys can see it's right here. It's made by, I'm gonna say this measurement here, it is 8. I got the number from the top, and 6. It's made by 8 and 6. So I know for a triangle, I have to multiply 8 times 6. Let me write this at the side. I have to multiply 8 times 6. But I know 8 times 6 will give me the area of a rectangle. A triangle is half of the rectangle, so whatever I get, I'm going to divide this by 2. Right? A triangle is half of a rectangle. So 8 times 6 divided by 2 happens to be 24. So each of my triangles is 24. All right, let me make sure I know the measurement of each side of my triangles. I know 8, 6, and then this side right here, it is 10. Let me find out what's the height, the distance between my 2 triangles. The reality is a number that has nothing to do with my triangles. In this case, it's 10. And I'm going to multiply 10 times each side of my base. So I'm going to get 60, 80, 100. So I went 10 times 6, 10 times 8, and 10 times 10. Now, just let me add everything. Use a calculator if you need to. And I'm going to get 288. Right, I just add everything. All right, not bad. Let's take a look at question number 3. First thing I got to start with is look for a shape that is not a rectangle. I see this shape. It's a trapezoid. So let me just say that I have a trapezoid on top and a trapezoid at the bottom. Right? If we stand this thing up, if we stand it on the base, that's how we're going to have it. It can be sideways. This thing is laying down. It's fine. Now let me get the area of my trapezoid. I remember for trapezoid, the first thing I gotta do is look at the sides that are parallel. This side is 9, and this side is 4. Right, I'm looking at the 2 sides that are parallel, and I'm gonna add them. All right, 9 plus 4 is 13. I have to multiply this by the height, which is 4.3, right? The distance between the bases. And then I have to divide this by 2. I'm going to go 13 times 4.3 divided by 2. Now I get that the bases are 27.95. I know it says round out the answered, round it to one decimal place. This is not the answered, so I'm not going to round it just yet. Just going to leave it at 27.95. Now I have the area of the bases, top and bottom. I have to get the area of the sides, right? The walls. We call sometimes lateral area. Okay, the base has 4 sides, so I'm going to have 4 walls at the side. Let me get the measurements of the 4 sides of my base. So I know one of them is 9. I know this one at the bottom is 4. This one here, I'm going to say it's 5. You guys can see where I got the 5 from. And then I'm going to say this other one here, this is also going to be 5. I know base, and let me highlight, based on these 2 slashes, I know those 2 sides are equal. Okay, so I know the measurements of my base, of every side of the base. Let me see the number that has nothing to do with my base. In this case, 6. So I'm going to multiply 6 times each side of the base. So 6 times 5, 6 times 9, 6 times 5, and 6 times 4. Right? 6 times each side of the base. And then I'm just going to add everything. According to my calculator, I have 193.9. Okay, not bad. Let's take a look at question number 4. First, let's start with a shape that is not a rectangle. I can see it. There's 2 of them, but I'm only going to highlight one of them. Because we're looking at the side, it looks like an oval, but it's really a circle. So I'm going to have a circle on the top and a circle at the bottom. I remember the area of a circle. It's radius times pi. The radius is 6. Right, we can see it here. So I'm going to call this 36 times pi. For this moment, let me just leave it as pi. Let me leave pi as a pi. I don't really want to deal with decimals right now, so I'm just going to leave it as 36 pi. And I'm going to say each of my circles 36 pi, right? Radius times pi. Now, the center, even though it doesn't look like it is, the centered is going to be a big rectangle. Okay. The short side of my rectangle is going to be 5. Is the distance between my circles. The long side is going to be based on my radius. My radius is 6. I'm going to say the long side is going to be 12 times pi. I went radius times 2, right? Diameter. Maybe you guys have seen this formula before. Circumference is equal to diameter times pi. Right? And the diameter is 2 times the radius. So circumference is 2 times the radius times pi. Maybe you guys have seen this before. That is the distance around the circle. And in reality, that's the long side of the rectangle. It wraps around the circle. If you guys don't believe me, with caution, cut a soda can. Cut it and you're gonna see it's a big rectangle. Okay. Now I have a rectangle where one side is 5, the long side is 12 times pi. So I'm going to say combined, my rectangle is going to be 60 pi, right? I just went 12 times 5. Okay, so I have the area of my circles. I have the area of my rectangle. I'm just going to add everything. So right now, I'm leaving pi as a pi. Right now I have 132 pi. Right, I just added everything, 36 plus 60 plus 36. If my instructions are leave pi as a pi, because sometimes you guys will run into such instructions. If it says leave pi as a pi, 132 pi, that's it. That's it. That's it. Now, if it says multiply it, and I'm going to multiply it, I'm going to use the pi symbol on my calculator. So I'm going to go 132 times pi. According to my calculator, round it to one decimal place, I'm going to get 414.7. So be careful. If I say leave your terms in pi, 132 pi. The way you guys type in the number pi is the letters Pi. When you guys are typing in your homework, type in Pi, and then you guys are going to see the pi symbol. If I ask you to multiply it all out, this is it. Now, where you guys can show your work, yeah, in your homework it says show work. If you guys type it in, 132 times pi, it starts working as a calculator. So you guys can just type it in there. You have a calculator with you. All right, let me do just that. There we go.